as Dan said, my name is Tonachel. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. And for those of you not familiar with our organization, we're a national nonprofit environmental advocacy organization. We have about 1.3 million members and activists that support us in the policy initiatives that we push for. I'm located in our New York City office. I spent prior to that moving to New York City, I was in our San Francisco office for about 4 years, and a couple of years ago got engaged in detail on electric vehicles when NRDC worked with the Electric Power Research Institute on a study that basically was looking at what would be the carbon benefits of a wide-scale adoption of electrified vehicles. We looked at plug-in hybrids, but basically the same conclusions would apply whether it's plug-in hybrids or a combination of plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles. And basically we found that the combination of a cap on our utility sector with wide-scale adoption of electric vehicles, you could cut emissions equivalent to taking a third of today's fleet off the road. So real big opportunities, and I think everyone sort of talked about that in the various discussions that we've had today. So on that theme of what the opportunity is, and also, we've made some progress. Dan talked about what the big challenge is ahead of us, and that still remains, but we have made some progress. In this graph, this is transportation sector carbon dioxide, or greenhouse gas emissions and carbon dioxide equivalent. That red line at the top is basically taking a forecast of where we were headed. And that is the growth in the number of vehicles, keeping efficiency sort of constant, efficiency of those vehicles constant at today's level, and a growth of VMT. And that was using government forecasts. The blue line, the next line down, is the combination of improved fuel economy standards and the recent 2012 to 2016 that Ken mentioned, standards on greenhouse gas emissions from cars and light trucks, combined with what's called the renewable fuel standard, which is a requirement that the government has to blend in a certain amount of biofuels into the fuel supply. So that's given us some progress, but the green line is basically where we have to go if we want to meet our 80% reduction by 2050 in transportation sector emissions. So if we say the transportation sector has to do its fair share to meet our overall climate goals, then we've got a big wedge to fill. One thing I wanted to just emphasize about, Martha just talked about the low carbon fuel standard. NRDC strongly supports that as a transition from this federal policy that we have now, which is just based on biofuels, to a policy like the low carbon fuel standard, which is basically, for the reasons that it's strictly performance based. It doesn't say you have to blend so many volumes of a certain kind of fuel. Any fuel can be part of the program, so that's why electricity is part of it, biofuel is part of it, natural gas can be part of it, and anything we haven't thought of, which in the coming years we hope to have more breakthrough innovations. It provides certainty to the market that there will be an increasing need for these low carbon fuels, fuels that when blended into the overall transportation fuel supply would reduce the carbon intensity of the fuel. So that certainty, of course, means investment, and Arthur just talked about how the low carbon fuel standard could be a great motivator for electric vehicles in the region. All those reasons are why organizations like mine are behind the low carbon fuel standard. Now, I just want to talk for a minute about the fuel efficiency standard, and this is related actually to the graphic that Ken showed, but it's an international perspective. So this is authentic gallons per mile for light-duty vehicles. When I say light-duty vehicles, I mean cars and light trucks like minivans, SUVs, and pickups. These are the international standards for light-duty vehicles. And you can see the United States is down towards the bottom. That's not the place we want to be. This is miles per gallon, so a lower miles per gallon, less efficient fleet, right? We are recently, and largely because of action that was initially taken by California and the states like the New England and Northeast and Atlantic states that joined California, started have been forcing an increase, and that's reflected from 2012 up to 2016. That's where we get to this new 35 mile per gallon equivalent standard, also equivalent to reductions in down to 250 grams per mile CO2. Well, EPA is now, at the direction of the president, looking at the next round, 2017 out to 2025. What are we going to do with that next set of standards? And I can mention that there's two basic scenarios being, there's a series of scenarios being looked at, bordered by a 3% per year improvement or a 6% per year improvement. And so I've added these onto this graphic that's produced by ICCT. And basically what you can see is that if we go on the 3% trajectory, we're still behind internationally. We're not passing other countries in terms of the trajectory we're on for our standards. If we go on to 6%, now we're catching up to where the European Union is going. We're catching up to Japan. That puts, having a standard on the high side, that 6% per year improvement, means that we're putting our domestic industry in a position of taking leadership and making sure that we don't go back to the situation which we just had, a year or two ago, where we're bailing out our auto companies because they can't sell products that are going to compete in the marketplace. So we've joined with a bunch of environmental groups and consumer groups in a campaign which is called Go 60 MPG, and you can go to this website, go60.mpg.org, and this is where we're inviting the public to join us in calling for us to set the most aggressive standard that's going to be good from a pollution perspective, good for consumers by saving the most money at the pump, reducing our oil dependence, and really, like I just said, putting our domestic auto industry in the forefront in producing clean vehicles. Now, to reach this 60 mpg, this is model year 2025, so it's 15 years from now. We projected, and we looked at a bunch of studies by MIT and others of what technologies could achieve that standard, and essentially what we're talking about is advanced gasoline vehicles. We're talking about 55% hybrids, and we're talking about roughly 15% of the fleet being electrified. So this is not, we're talking about 15 years away. This is certainly something that we can do. And this is just to point out that when you look at the number of hybrid and electric vehicles on the market today versus just in 5 years, the number of models that are going to be offered, and this is based on a forecast that somebody, an analyst in Michigan who basically tracks the supplier chain and knows what suppliers are building and why they're building those to supply to the automakers to make these electrified vehicles. The projection is we'll have 4 times the number of models that we have today just in the next 5 years in terms of hybrid and electric vehicles. That leads me to the last point, which is getting to this idea of consumer choice. And how do you know what to pick when you go to the dealership? I was in Chicago just yesterday testifying at a hearing that EPA and the Department of Transportation were holding on revisions to the fuel economy label. So we're all sort of familiar with looking for a car at the dealership and seeing 27 miles per gallon, or it's typically much lower. But they're revamping the label, and this has been mandated by law because they have to include things like carbon pollution in the label. One of the proposals that they put forth is to put a big letter grade on cars, and I think this is a real great opportunity for automakers that are producing advanced vehicles like electric drivetrain vehicles, because those cars will be A's, A-minuses, A's, A-pluses. They'll be graded very highly. They'll show up. They'll grab the consumer when they go to the dealership, and there's a number of aspects about this label that are really positive changes. And I bring this up because you as a public can weigh in. You can tell the government what you think of this label. There's other options that they propose. The website's right there. And I'll just close to say that also the testimony that I gave yesterday, and I blogged about this. You can find it all on our website, nrdc.org, or go directly to switchboard.nrdc.org. Lot of new information on the label, but I think very helpful to the consumers, and also helpful for making sure that we are pushing these cleaner technologies into the fleet. So with that, I thank you.